Picture this. The country with the highest per capita immigration in the developed world now has new immigrants fleeing in droves. 1 in 5 new immigrants has left Canada within 25 years of arriving, and a recent report showed that a full 40% of new immigrants are contemplating leaving. And to make matters worse, the ones leaving or planning to are overwhelmingly skilled economic migrants, the very people the nation relies on to grow its economy and maintain its crumbling infrastructure. A 2024 Ipsos study stated, likelihood to leave varied considerably by immigration category on arrival, with economic immigrants and those with prior Canadian experience most likely to plan their exits. In other words, those leaving are the ones with options. The probability of emigration ranks highly among the highly educated, with those possessing doctorates or master's degrees at 33% and 29% respectively. Those admitted under the investor or entrepreneur categories ranked similarly high at 41% and 29% respectively. Meanwhile, those remaining are the ones without options, those who received permanent resident status through student visa loopholes, those without advanced education, and others lacking the skills needed to succeed elsewhere. So why is this happening? Why are so many immigrants packing up and leaving? What's driving this exodus? And most importantly, knowing this trend exists, how can Canada fix its immigration system so it once again serves the interests of Canadians? The causes of this issue are numerous, but perhaps the most troubling is that Canada's immigration system has become a giant scam. To understand how we got here, let's start from the source. While Canadians are painfully familiar with the nation's out-of-control cost of living, skyrocketing housing costs, and horrendous job market, many prospective immigrants are not. Canada still enjoys a sterling reputation in countries like India and the Philippines, where the Canadian dream is aggressively marketed to wide-eyed hopefuls. Dishonest overseas immigration consultants promise visas, guaranteed jobs, and secure housing, all for a hefty fee, of course. Unsurprisingly, prospective immigrants take these promises at face value. But when these newcomers arrive in Canada, they quickly realize they were sold a bill of goods. They end up crammed in a one-bedroom apartment with 5 roommates, barely scraping by delivering Uber Eats or working the graveyard shift at Tim Hortons. The foreign consultants don't care that they're setting these people up for failure. They got theirs. Who cares what happens to the rubes they swindled? And because they aren't regulated by the Canadian government, there's little to stop the scam from continuing unchecked. As if that wasn't bad enough, Canadian immigration consultants, lawyers, and so-called recruiters have been implicated in a massive scheme abusing the Labor Market Impact Assessment (LMIA) system. In this scheme, low-wage jobs are outright sold to foreign workers, fast-tracking them to permanent residency, often for prices exceeding $50,000. 2023 alone saw 240,000 new LMIA jobs approved, more than double the number from just 5 years ago. While the exact number of temporary foreign workers in Canada is hard to pin down, it hovers just under 1 million. And then there's the student visa system, another area rife with fraud. Those holding student visas are currently allowed to work 24 hours a week, but many work off the books to get around this restriction. On top of that, these students earn points towards permanent residency through express entry, effectively turning education into a backdoor to the immigration system. Hundreds of diploma mills have popped up specifically catering to this demographic, pumping out diplomas like candy, often without requiring academic work or even attendance. As of 2024, there are 997,820 international students in Canada, nearly as many as the 1.1 million in the United States, a nation with almost 10 times the population. This staggering figure illustrates just how broken the system has become. These students aren't flocking to Canada because Canadian colleges are vastly superior to American ones. They're doing it to exploit a flawed system. While some restrictions have been introduced, such as reducing the number of new international student visas from 485,000 to 437,000, a modest 10% decrease, these moves have largely been symbolic. They offer the appearance of reform in response to scandal, but fall far short of the comprehensive overhaul that Canada's immigration system urgently needs. The issue is reminiscent of an Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a snake eating its own tail. The more immigrants Canada lets in, the worse conditions become for everyone living there, immigrants and native-born Canadians alike. Housing prices continue to soar, wait times for medical treatment grow longer, and the overall cost of living becomes increasingly unmanageable. According to the 2024 Ipsos study referenced earlier, the top reasons immigrants are considering leaving Canada are clear. 79% cited unaffordable housing, 65% pointed to low salaries and income, and 54% expressed general concern about the economy. Keep in mind, these resources are coming overwhelmingly from the educated, skilled, and investor-class Canadians. If even they can't hack it in Canada, what hope does the average Canadian have? To put the housing crisis in perspective, consider this. As of April 2025, the average home price in Vancouver is $1.23 million. In Toronto, it's $1.11 million, and in Montreal, it's $625,000. These numbers include condos and townhouses, putting the cost of a standalone house significantly higher. This places Canada's 3 largest cities among the most expensive in the world, with Vancouver and Toronto cracking the top 10 list for least affordable cities worldwide. While part of the issue is the failure to build new homes at a pace that matches population growth, a problem that could, in theory, be addressed through smart policy, the real culprit is continuous mass immigration over the past decade. It doesn't take an expert to see the most straightforward solution: turn off the immigration tap. And yet, despite mounting public frustration, the federal government refuses to act. It's now apparent why. They want housing prices to remain sky high. At first glance, that might sound bizarre, but it makes sense when you examine Canadian voting patterns. Take a look at the data showing voter intentions by age group. It's only the 60-plus age bracket that still shows majority support for the Liberal Party. This group wants their million-dollar homes to continue inflating in value and has concluded that the Liberal Party is the one to make this happen. Whether or not older Canadians realize this is being achieved through relentless mass immigration is uncertain, but thanks to the large numbers and consistently high voter turnout, they have the political influence to shape government policy in their favor. In many ways, the downfall of Canada is not historically surprising. A nation grows strong when citizenship is treated as a valued privilege for those willing to earn and sacrifice for it. National pride and a sense of civic duty create internal resilience, enabling societies to endure challenges like war, famine, or economic hardship. The classic example of this dynamic is the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, where citizenship was initially restricted to free-born Roman males. These citizen soldiers were expected to prioritize the state above their own lives, following a strict system of civic militarism, grounded in discipline, courage, and unwavering loyalty to Rome. Over time, the concept of citizenship was gradually expanded to newly conquered tribes, and eventually to nearly everyone across the empire. This expansion diluted the meaning of Roman citizenship and eroded the strong sense of civic duty that underpinned the empire's success. What followed was a descent into decadence, an increasing reliance on foreign mercenaries instead of citizen soldiers, and ultimately the decay and collapse of the empire. The parallels to Canada are hard to ignore. Just a century ago, Canadian civic pride was forged in the crucible of immense sacrifice Canada's youth made in both World War I and World War II. The bloody victory at Vimy Ridge in World War I, for example, is now seen as the birth of the nation, marking the emergence of a distinct Canadian identity. However, this Canada is rapidly fading. The civic pride that once unified the nation feels like a relic of the past, confined to textbooks and remembrance ceremonies. Much like Rome, Canada has devalued its citizenship through mass immigration. When anyone in the world can become a Canadian with few meaningful expectations, the value of citizenship erodes. Civic pride becomes difficult to sustain when the country is not seen as a shared national project, but as a destination to be exploited as long as it remains convenient. And as the Romans eventually discovered, granting citizenship to outsiders doesn't automatically instill a sense of loyalty, responsibility, or national pride. Now, Canadians are learning the same lesson. Considering all of this, what can be done to correct the situation and restore balance to an increasingly broken Canada? First, the use of international students as a de facto temporary workforce must come to an end. The current system relies on foreign students to fill low-wage jobs, such as cooks, cashiers, and delivery drivers, jobs that traditionally went to local high school and college students. The extreme competition for these positions clearly illustrates that labor supply far outpaces demand. This goal can be accomplished by reducing the permitted work hours for international students to 0. Students who came to Canada primarily to work full-time while enrolled in a diploma mill will automatically self-deport, leaving behind only those genuinely pursuing higher education. Second, before Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister in 2015, Canada's immigration system was generally well run. The system was based on a point system, prioritizing applicants with skills, work experience, and education needed to strengthen the nation's economy. A return to this model would solve many of today's problems. Rather than admitting huge surpluses of Uber drivers and McDonald's cashiers, jobs with legitimate shortages like doctors, nurses, engineers, and skilled tradesmen would be prioritized, easing shortages in these sectors. To further streamline skilled worker immigration, Canada must reduce or eliminate the often excessive and redundant requirements that force professionals with foreign credentials to retrain or recertify unnecessarily. Third, it's worth remembering that until 1967, Canada placed restrictions on where immigrants could settle. This came along with regrettable race-based discrimination, like the Chinese Exclusion Act. However, the geographic restrictions themselves were beneficial. Reinstating geographic requirements would solve multiple issues simultaneously. It would help fill genuine labor shortages plaguing rural and remote communities, particularly in the healthcare sector. It would also relieve pressure on housing markets in major urban centers like Vancouver and Toronto, which are currently overwhelmed due to the high concentration of newcomers. Finally, it's important to correct a common misconception. Canada has long maintained high immigration levels, even before 2015. Between 2006 and 2015, under Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, roughly 250,000 immigrants were admitted annually. This amounted to an annual population increase of 0.8%, nearly 3 times higher than the United States during the same period, which averaged just 0.33%. All this to say that Canada desperately needs a pause, a deliberate break from the unsustainable pace of immigration. Equally important is a cultural reset, a rethinking of the assumption that immigration is the cure-all for every national challenge. It's time to toss aside empty slogans like "diversity is our strength" and start treating immigration not as a moral imperative, but as a policy tool, one that must be used wisely, sparingly, and in the service of the common good. Immigration in and of itself is neither virtuous nor harmful. It must contribute to the overall well-being and prosperity of all members of society, rather than benefiting a select few at the top profiting from it. Canada must return to a model where citizenship is earned, not handed out indiscriminately. One where the rights of citizenship come with expectations of loyalty, contribution, and pride in one's adopted homeland. Citizenship must once again be seen as a privilege, one that demands effort, sacrifice, and a shared commitment to building something greater than oneself. Only then can we begin to repair what has been broken. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and watching one of these 2 videos next.